Hi everyone, welcome back to Falcon's House. Today I'm going to attempt to explain buffer bloat, why it is bad, and some options to reduce or eliminate it. I will link to pages from Untangle and bufferbloat.net in the comments with more information and a written explanation of what's going on, and I'll probably cover some of that in this video as well. The short answer is that it adds additional latency on the network that causes worse performance for online gaming, video calls, or voice over IP, anything that is latency sensitive. So if you just need a very simple explanation, that's it, and you don't have to bother watching the video, but there is a lot more detailed information that I can give. So one example is one of my friends has Google Fiber, and when we would play Rocket League, his ping was normally great, in the teens or the low 20s, and occasionally his ping would spike to the max the game could register at 999. It was probably actually a lot higher than that because it would seem like everything was just jumping around for him. Like he couldn't aim at the ball, he couldn't drive. It would basically become unplayable for like anywhere from like a couple seconds to a couple minutes. And most likely this was being caused by buffer bloat because even though he had gigabit fiber connection from Google, it still wasn't enough to keep up. Like the router wasn't strong enough, so it was still causing the latency issues and it was affecting his performance. Another good example is, imagine if you're playing Battle Royale. It's very popular right now. You could be playing Apex Legends or PUBG or Fortnite or whatever you want to play, and you get one death and then you're out of the match and you have to start over. So imagine if you're trying to aim at somebody and you think you have them and you fire and you miss a bunch of shots because what you see and what's being sent to the server are different. And so they're in a different position than what you actually know about. This is why low ping is so important for online competitive gaming. But you might have a good ping most of the time and you're going to have these little lag spikes due to buffer bloat. And that would be a horrible way to end a competitive match. My network, for example, has cable internet with 100 megabits per second down and 10 up. My computer connects to my router at gigabit speeds, and when I upload a video to YouTube, the file is transferred from my computer to the router at gigabit. But once it hits the router, it can only upload to the internet at 10 megabits per second. So while the file is being transferred from my computer at a full speed, it's now being shrunk down into, it has to wait. Those packets have to wait. So what'll happen is the router will then send a signal back to the computer to pause sending the file, and it'll fill up a buffer of commands that it's going to send as soon as it's available. And the larger the buffer, the more delay you get. Now, when you're doing a video upload or some other low latency thing, that doesn't matter. Like if it takes an extra half a second for those packets to be sent, it doesn't really matter. But what happens is if you were playing a game at the same time or making a voice call or a video call or something, and your packets are also needing to be sent, it'll put them in line behind all the other packets. By default, everything is just first in, first out. So the packets that arrive first are the ones that get sent first. So now your gaming traffic is being stuck behind all this other stuff, which could be hundreds or even thousands of milliseconds, especially if you have multiple people on your network and they could all be using different things. Like the more devices we have on the network, the more of a problem buffer bloat is going to be. And depending on how much big your buffer is, this could be a 20 millisecond wait, it could be 500, it could be 1,000. And once you get over about 100 milliseconds of latency, that is noticeable to the average person. And if you're a competitive gamer or something, you might notice a significantly lower number of buffer bloat that it'll cause a problem. I can do a test on DSL reports in fast.com and it will show buffer bloat. I have run the test a few times in the past and gotten somewhere between 40 and 70 milliseconds of added latency with quality of service turned off. But other people I've seen online that have made videos about this have had 100 or 200, as high as 500 milliseconds of latency, So it could be a lot worse for you, or it could be better. Like some people have very little native latency, or there's something else on their network that's slowing their connection down enough so that it isn't a problem. So maybe you should run the test and then post your results in the comments. The best fix for buffer bloat is an internet that is the same speed as your network. If you have a full 1 gigabit up and down, it should theoretically never need to buffer anything, because it should go from your computer at gigabit, hit the router, and then upload at gigabit. But as my friend with Google Fiber found out, he still was getting lag spikes. So that might not even be completely true. That's more like a theoretical fix. So you'd still probably want to run quality of service and smart queue management in order to mitigate this even further. So the main mitigation technique is called smart queue management. And basically what this does is prioritizes certain types of traffic so that they can jump to the front of the line. So instead of, say, your gaming traffic being stuck behind this file transfer, it says, oh, it's gaming traffic, and it jumps it in front, and then it gets sent immediately. So your more latency-sensitive applications can be prioritized higher than other traffic that isn't as important. Most software uses 4 or 8 queues of different priorities. More queues isn't necessarily better. Realistically, most home users probably need like 2 or 3, just a high level and then a low level. But if you feel to do video calls and gaming, you might want to have 3 levels: gaming, video calls, and then all other data. But this will help with managing everything, and will make sure you can get as close to your full speed as possible. Now, in order for your router to actually start taking down the amount of data required, it has to limit the speed a little bit so it becomes the buffering system, not your router. So usually you can get, with like the best ones like Untangle and stuff, you can get about a 5% bandwidth loss. Whereas some other software solutions, or usually hardware solutions, especially with quality service, require 30, 40, 50% losses in speed, which could be significant to if you're paying for a lot of speed. Now, the other thing to take into account is that some hardware routers, like the one I have now, the R6400 from Netgear, it allows for quality of service just on the upload, but I was still getting buffer bloat, about 10 to 20 milliseconds, even if I lowered my speed significantly. It just isn't fast enough to keep up fully, so it still buffers things. And that's part of why I wanted to do this project. I think I can eliminate buffer bloat 100% on my end, and all the other buffering will be from the ISP or beyond, and that's just out of my control. The biggest problem with quality of service and smart queue management, it is very resource intensive. It needs a very fast processor, a decent amount of RAM, fast hard drives. Like, it can't just run on anything. That's why home routers don't do it very effectively, because they just don't have, they're more tuned for using low power, less electricity, so they cost like 50 cents to $1.50 a month to run, whereas this is going to be $4 to $6 to run every month, but it should provide such better performance, it is worth it for most people. The one exception to this is Duma OS, and they have an option to dynamically enable quality of service when it detects gaming traffic, as I've mentioned in a previous video, and that allows them to effectively give you low latency and high speed as necessary, but just not at the same time. So if somebody's playing a game, all your other traffic is reduced. The videos I've seen said they recommend 70%, but these people were actually needing to lower it to 30% bandwidth in order to get the lowest possible latency, which is quite a dramatic deduction for something that's like you're going from 30 or 40 megabits upload speed to 10, and you're going from a gigabit down to 300. That's a big jump down in performance, and you shouldn't need to do that with a software version. So in conclusion, buffer bloat is worsening your internet experience, especially if you do video calls or gaming. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe, and I'll have some more videos about configuring a software router coming up.